Welcome, everyone, and thank you for attending our second EnviroSchool webinar of the 2023-2024 school year. Time is flying. My name is Eileen Bookestein. I'm the Environmental Education Coordinator here at EGLE, and today we are focused on teaching climate change with a place-based focus on Michigan. If you've joined us for any of our previous EnviroSchool webinars that we ran last year, you might remember that we focused on the work of EGLE's regulatory divisions, which are those 6 blue rectangles listed here. And you met some of our staff who work in those programs and the work that they do to protect the environment and public health. And you can view recordings of all of those webinars that are past on our YouTube channel and our EGLE Classroom website. If you're interested, I'll drop that in the chat later. But this year, we're focusing on the work of EGLE's executive offices, which are our high-level strategy and policy focused offices that work on advancing key priorities of our department and key priorities of the state when it comes to protecting the environment and public health. So you're going to meet one of our staffers from the Office of Climate and Energy today and learn about some of the work that we're doing around climate change education and climate change action in Michigan. We have 4 webinars total scheduled this school year. So if you missed our October webinar, which was about citizen and community science, that's up on our YouTube channel. And we also have registration open right now for our February 8th webinar, which will be in partnership with our Office of the Environmental Justice Public Advocate. So go ahead and check those out later. But for now, we're going to move into talking about climate change. So before I turn it over, we have 2 really great presenters who are with us today. And before I turn it over to them, I'm just going to give a little bit, like a couple minutes of quick background information around the why we're teaching about climate change and the why we're teaching about it from a place-based perspective in order to really help our students learn the most. And the why really begins with the data, right? Like we need to teach about it because we can see it happening. It's impacting us globally, but it's also impacting us right here in Michigan. And the way that it impacts us is not felt equally and equitably. And so there's a lot of people who are very vulnerable who are feeling really heavy impacts that we need to be thinking about from an equity and a justice perspective. And these really big topics can be hard for our young people to grasp, especially those who are younger or elementary students, maybe who just haven't quite developed that capacity to process these really large, abstract, systemic issues. So when we take what's talking about what's happening out in the world and we bring it home and we talk about what's happening here and what impact those changes have on our own community, or maybe a community that we visited or vacationed in, or we know someone who lives in, it's a lot easier to make that connection and have that impact on the learning. And looking at the issues from a local perspective also really helps to inspire ideas and innovation around local solutions, which we'll get to a little bit later in our session today. So the U.S. Global Change Project was really accommodating and released the 5th National Climate Assessment for the United States just last week in time for my webinar. So I was really excited that I could share this with you. The National Climate Assessments are a really awesome resource for understanding the regional impacts of climate change. And you can see here in the Midwest, we have rising temperatures, extreme precipitation, drought, other related events. And you can learn all about how climate change is impacting us by looking in more detail at this report. And if you want to look at all the details that are in there, there's that little sections button and it shows you all the details that they go into. So I'm recommending this, and I'm going to show you a couple things from this report, but I recommend that you take that as an educator back and really go deep into it and look at what you can pull out and bring to your students. And I want to add that they did one really cool thing with this report. If you go, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but if you go up to this About section and you read the front matter for the report, they started it out with this really beautiful poem that was written just for the climate assessment. And there's this huge section of art and climate that's connected to it. So there's some really cool cross-curricular teaching opportunities in this report as well that I would encourage you to check out. From an educator perspective, one of the things I really love about this report is that they included all these confidence levels everywhere in their statements about what's happening with climate change. And I want to touch on this because it's important, because climate change is happening now and it's observable, but there's also so much that we're teaching about that's related to modeling and predictions and what's happening in the future. And so much of the misinformation about climate change stems from people not really understanding how the modeling and projections work. So they think that we're just guessing or that we don't really know what's happening. So these confidence levels introduce a neat opportunity to also teach students about data literacy and understanding how we come to conclusions. And you can see when you click on this read more button here and you're getting into the details of the report, you'll see these words that are underlined, that when you hover over them, like the word scenario here, you get information, you get more information about what that actually means, and really helps you understand what they're talking about. So really cool resource. I highly encourage you to check it out. Let's look at a couple of the graphics that came out of this report to see what some of these scenarios are. And I'm not going into detail on these because I need to turn it over to Sarah in a minute, but I want to show you some of the cool things that you can pull from this report for your teaching. So for example, in the Midwest, we expect to see changes in runoff, but those changes in runoff vary depending on what climate scenario we're in. We expect to see some extreme precipitation impacts on our environment, and those can range anywhere from really low water stress to high water flooding. And these are figures that are freely accessible in the report. You can go grab them later if you're interested. I wanted to show the trends in the freeze dates that was in there because we are very, very close to releasing the final version of our updated MEECS climate change unit. And we have a whole lesson on agriculture and cherries that has to do with Leelanau Peninsula, which is right up here, which is being highlighted in this graphic from the National Climate Assessment. So you can see, there's variation in what's happening with our freeze dates across the Midwest. We're seeing increases in temperature in our lakes. The graphic on the left here shows increases in Great Lakes temperatures in the summer, but we're also seeing warming temperatures in the winter, which means we have less ice cover. And the report goes into detail talking about the benefits of having ice covered inland lakes and the impacts when that ice cover is reduced. I also wanted to show that graphic because there's a really cool ecosystem services activity in our brand new MEECS ecosystem and biodiversity lesson that is currently available that you could take this graphic and do a climate adaptation to. So some cool resources are out there. But after you see all that data, you might start to feel a little, I don't know, stressed. Maybe you're like, oh, shoot, it doesn't look so good out there. And this is not the first climate assessment to warn of these big major changes. The big IPCC report, the most recent one, warned us that the climate is changing even more rapidly than we had expected, and that it's very likely to have significant impacts on quality of life for billions of people around the world, which is kind of scary to think about. And this was actually the first IPCC report that clearly linked a changing climate to mental health struggles. And we are seeing climate anxiety really come across as an emerging area of research for young people. In fact, a study that was published in the Lancet Planetary Health in December of 2021 reported out the results of a survey of 10,000 children from 10 countries, and it looked at climate anxiety and their beliefs about government responses to climate change. And you can see in the graphic here, the lines on the top of the graphic are all the countries together. If you're looking for the US, it's the lines on the bottom of the graphic. 59% are either very or extremely worried of youth in these 10 countries about climate change, and 84% are at least moderately worried about climate change and how it impacts them. And that blue line I felt like was really sad. 45% said their feelings about climate change were negatively affecting their daily life and functioning. So that's a really big impact. I'm not showing you the next graphic, but the next graphic was about how they feel about the government has response to climate change. And the response was overall, they felt very betrayed, like their governments had not done enough work to address climate change. So pretty sad. Our youth are feeling really sad and really anxious. And if you educate about climate change in the classroom, you've probably seen some of this come up. And you also know that one of the best ways to fight against that anxiety is really with stories of hope and of progress. And if we want our young people to strive toward a healthy and sustainable future, they've got to know what that might look like. And so we need to pair that data around what's happening with climate change and the effects of climate change with what people are doing to address those effects. And that can help mitigate some of the anxiety and the mental health issues that arise for young people, especially when you also pair it with opportunities for them to act. So there are some really cool solutions in the works around the world. and also right here in Michigan. And I am so proud that our state is a real leader when it comes to climate action. And that's something that should really give us hope. So with that, I'm thrilled to turn it over to Sarah Hutchinson, who is the Climate Data Science Officer in EGLE's Office of Climate and Energy. And Sarah is going to tell you a little bit about what Michigan is doing around climate change and what some of the opportunities are for those of you who are educators, especially in schools, to be involved. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Stop sharing. Go ahead and share your own screen, Sarah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Eileen. Let's see. All right. So we should be good. And just as a heads up, I will not be able to see the chat. More than happy to answer questions after the presentation, but yeah, so let's just go ahead and dive right into it. So I guess first I should formally introduce myself. Hi everyone, my name's Sarah. I use she or they pronouns. I'm fine with either. And I'm the Climate Data Science Officer for our Office of Climate and Energy. And so today I'll be working to sort of walk you all through what the climate plan is and how we're currently trying to implement it. So I got about 15 minutes here. I'm probably going to talk a little bit fast at points, but always feel free to reach out to the office and we're more than happy to answer any questions. So as Eileen very wonderfully pointed out, we know climate change is real. It's here. It's been here. And, you know, comparatively to, you know, almost 100 so years ago, or more than 100 years ago, Michigan is almost 3 degrees Fahrenheit warmer and gets 5 more inches of rain per year on average. And so, you know, we've seen that back in 2012 with the cherry crisis that happened in the Upper Peninsula and upper part of the Lower Peninsula, as Eileen was mentioning, as well as, you know, a lot of the air quality concerns that we had, you know, even this year. So we all know that a lot of anthropogenic or man-made greenhouse gases are influencing climate change, but where do these actually come from? You know, what does it look like? So here is sort of a breakdown on where these greenhouse gases come from. Generally speaking, the most comes from 3 categories: electricity, transportation, and our built environment, so our buildings. And then the rest is sort of made up through industrial processes and agriculture. And I will just make a note that these numbers that you're seeing here are based on the gross amount of emissions. And for the purposes of this pie chart, we're not including things like, you know, sequestration from trees or things like that. Though I'll get into detail a little bit later on some of our other greenhouse gas accounting initiatives. So what is the Office of Climate and Energy? How was it formed? How did we eventually get to the climate plan? So the Office of Climate and Energy was established within EGLE in 2019 under Governor Whitmer through a variety of different executive orders to provide guidance on reducing greenhouse gas emissions and ultimately trying to implement the My Healthy Climate Plan. Additionally, the governor created the Council on Climate Solutions, which is sort of an advisory body to the Office of Climate and Energy. And there are quarterly meetings that are made up of a variety of Michigan residents that are appointed by the governor to represent a pretty diverse range of sectors, experiences, and other relevant expertise. And so they have a website that I've linked at the end of this presentation. As I mentioned, all of their meetings are public and you are more than welcome, I should say, to attend. So how does this sort of fold into our climate commitment? So through these executive orders and executive directives, we were also joined to the U.S. Climate Alliance, and we joined a variety of states by committing to reducing emissions from 2005 levels by at least 26 to 28% by 2025 and 50 to 52% by 2030. And then, you know, once we get to 2050, we expect to be carbon neutral economy-wide and maintain net negative emissions thereafter. And so that is more so speaking to, you know, the sequestration side of things of, okay, after we've emitted all of this stuff into the atmosphere, we want to work on taking some of that out. And so also through these litany of executive directives, this is how we came to develop the My Healthy Climate Plan, as well as our other climate goals. So here, the bullet points on the right are representative of what I just shared. And then this graphic on the right, or excuse me, the bullet points on the left, the graphic on the right is representative of how we came to develop the plan. So we had a variety of council meetings. We consulted with tribal governments, and we created 6 work groups in total that eventually more or less became the different subsections of the plan. We received, almost 2,000 public comments, and we also held a variety of listening sessions. And so going back to what Eileen was mentioning before, we know that this is based off of the best science available at the time in 2019, or I should say 2021 when it was released, 2019, I believe, when it was issued by executive directive. And, we looked at the IPCC, we looked at the national climate assessments. We really brought in all the industry experts that we could to really focus on, bringing together the best available science and then saying, okay, what can we do about it? And so the My Healthy Climate Plan is primarily focused on mitigation, but also encourages various adaptation opportunities, and is really broken down into 6 core action areas. And so that's committing to environmental justice and a just transition, cleaning energy production and modernizing the electric grid, electrifying vehicles and enhancing public transit, repairing and decarbonizing homes and businesses, driving clean energy jobs and innovation, and protecting Michigan's land and water. And so you can kind of see that these 6 action areas track relatively closely to that pie chart that I showed earlier of, where our greenhouse gas emissions come from. And so, we have all of these goals. What does it look like to, ultimately get to the carbon neutral goal in 2050, but on a shorter time scale, how do we even get to 2030 first, right? And so what I've sort of done here is broken up each of the 6 sections into a variety of goals under each of those. And then I'll go into a little bit later how we're actually trying to implement those goals. So for the first pillar, as we've started calling them recently, committing to environmental justice, in line with a lot of federal Justice 40 initiatives, trying to ensure that at least 40% of state funding and benefits, I think is most important here, is one of the very important keywords, for climate-related and water infrastructure initiatives benefits Michigan's disadvantaged communities, developing Justice 40 in partnership with those communities, and emphasizing a just transition for all workers through proactive engagement, job training, and workforce development. So moving on to the next one, I'll also add here that these are just, a high-level sampling of some of the main goals mentioned in the climate plan. For more detail, you can go in and read the climate plan. I wouldn't expect anyone to, honestly. It's about a 50-page document. But in terms of high level, this is sort of where we're at. And so this pie chart on the right sort of breaks down what the electricity sector looks like. What does that emission profile look like when we break it up into different fuel types for where we get our electricity? And so, you can see that at the time the plan was written, the highest contributor is natural gas, with nuclear energy coming in not far behind, although it's significantly less emitting. This is more so, a look at our electricity profile as a whole, instead of exclusively what comes from or what emits carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. So I apologize, I misspoke a little bit earlier. But so some of the high-level goals here are generating 60% of the state's electricity from renewable resources by 2030. And then we're trying to really weave in environmental justice through all of these pillars, as well as, having it committed to its own pillar as well. And so here, limiting energy burden from powering and heating homes to not more than 6% of annual income for low-income households. And so for context, some of the highest energy burden in the state is up to, I think, around 21 or 23% of folks' annual income is spent on powering and heating their homes. So moving on to the next one, electrifying vehicles and increasing public transit. We're trying to build the infrastructure necessary to support 2 million electric vehicles on the road by 2030 and increasing access to clean transportation options, including public transit by 15% each year. So the next pillar, decarbonizing homes and businesses, trying to reduce emissions from heating Michigan homes and businesses by 17% by 2030. And so that can look like electrification, that can look like energy efficiency upgrades, and other things like that. And we're also trying to increase investments in repairing and improving buildings to reduce costs for working families and small businesses. And so that sort of speaks a little bit to, that electrification, those energy efficiency upgrades, but also going into some of the repairs that need to be done before those changes can be implemented. So we're almost to the end here. I think this is the 5th pillar out of 6. And so looking at industry, trying to encourage clean innovation hubs, and really encourage collaboration between private and public entities towards research and development for reduced emission technologies and zero emission technologies from industries that are hard to decarbonize. And so that would be things like cement and steel production and things like that. You can sort of see the breakdown of what that looks like in terms of jobs on the graphic on the right here. And then we've sort of included food waste and recycling into this category as well. So we're wanting to triple Michigan's recycling rate to 45% and cut food waste by 50% by 2030. And so lastly, I'll finish it off here in terms of what the plan is. By protecting Michigan's land and water, protect 30% of Michigan's land and water by 2030. And so this is more broadly a part of the federal 30 by 30 initiative. And then also trying to leverage innovative strategies to support climate smart agriculture. So I'm quickly running out of time, but meeting the moment. So what exactly has been going on? How are we actually making progress on all of these goals that we set forth in the climate plan? So I'll sort of go through a variety of different categories, but again, like I said before, this is by no means exhaustive. This is simply illustrative. So most recently in the state budget, I believe the fiscal year 24 budget, nearly $1.2 billion was allocated in clean economy investments. And so you can sort of see the breakdown on the slides, but going by the different pillars, we have funding for cleaning the electric grid, transportation, environmental justice as its own line item, which is super exciting, and decarbonizing homes and businesses, as well as a variety of different cross-sector investments that don't fit neatly into one particular category because they involve so many different folks between each of these pillars. Moving on to legislation. This was recently signed, I believe, as of Tuesday last week, so it's been officially a week. And basically, you can read all of the sort of high-level details here, but this is a combination of two packages that worked their way through the legislature. And basically what these do is they work to codify some very important parts of and into law. And so I think one of the things that is particularly exciting is the expansion of the distributive generation cap. So for folks who may not be familiar, basically what that does is it allows in our electricity grid, we were previously limited to having 1% of energy distributed sort of across the state. So this looks like, having solar panels on your roof at your house, for example. And that cap was lifted, or I shouldn't say lifted, but it was raised to 10%. So that's a huge improvement here. Federal funding. So these are some of the, very high level, high priority items that we're working on. So the climate pollution reduction grants is a $4.6 billion competitive grant program towards, reducing emissions as much as possible. And the state of Michigan has so far received $3 million in a planning grant from EPA. I'll talk a little bit more on, how to get engaged and all that towards the a little bit further in the presentation. We've also got the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, which is split $27 billion over 5 years, split across 3 different sort of arms of this fund, which is the National Clean Investment Fund, Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, and Solar for All. And then we also have the Community Change Grants, which is a $2 billion nationwide competitive grant program that is specifically to benefit disadvantaged communities. And so this one is a little bit different, where the applications are accepted on a rolling basis and closes after funding is awarded and isn't necessarily on a time limit. So what are some of the OCE-led activities? So all of the things that I mentioned so far are, strategies that we're trying to coordinate and work through across all different types of government. So within EGLE, with MDOT or with MDHHS or, these other departments within the state of Michigan, but what are we sort of doing internally? What are things that we can, say confidently that we own? So I think one of the things that is going to be very important is the My Healthy Climate Plan annual report. So as part of those executive orders and executive directives, we are required to write an annual report and submit it to the governor by the end of the year, basically reporting out on what progress has been made within the state of Michigan and across the state of Michigan towards achieving those goals. And so that will be posted, the 2023 report. I'm currently writing it right now, but it will be posted on mi.gov/climate in early January 2024. We also have the climate liaisons, which is at least one representative from each division and office in EGLE, and we coordinate regularly on how best to integrate climate and climate change into their work. And then we have the climate conference coming up next year, May 16th and 17th at the Lansing Center. We currently have the program under development, but I wanted to make sure that it was out there for folks so that you can sort of reserve that time on your calendar. And, I'm going to be working with Eileen too to see what we can do in terms of education. And one thing that I forgot to include on my slide, which I will make sure to update that for when it gets sent around later, is the greenhouse gas inventory. And so some of those figures that I showed earlier are out of date. Those were when the plan was written, but I'm currently working on developing out the state's first official quote unquote, greenhouse gas inventory since about 2005. So that should be forthcoming as well. What does it look like in terms of external and community support? So we have the My Healthy Climate Corps, which is trying to implement the goals of the plan while adding capacity to nonprofits, tribal governments, local governments, folks like that across the state of Michigan. And so we're looking to place 30 members in this first cohort. We'll have a second cohort that begins later in 2024, where we basically do the same thing. And then we also have Catalyst communities, where we're trying to provide education, training, planning, and all kinds of good stuff to local governments as they work towards their sustainability goals. And so there are a variety of focus areas, and it's very similar, I think, to this group, just focused a little bit more on local governments. And so some similar programs are My Green Communities and My Next Cities. Lastly, because I am basically out of time, what does our public engagement look like? So I am currently in Flint right now, actually. We have an engagement session starting in about an hour. But we have some in-person and virtual sessions upcoming for plan implementation. And so the link to register for that will also be sent out. And we're sort of couching this under using the climate pollution reduction grants, as well as, all of our other opportunities towards implementing the plan. And we really, really, really want to hear everyone's feedback. So we've got a lot of feedback from the climate plan development process. We got a lot of feedback from work group recommendations from, we released a request for information a couple months ago. So we got a lot of great feedback from that. But we really want to visit as many communities as we can and really, integrate with the community and understand what they want and what they need, and sort of put, faces to names and, sort of interact with folks on that like place-based level. So we have a few in-person ones coming up. We have a few virtual ones coming up. We also have a call for projects. If there are projects that you'd like to see implemented across the state of Michigan, please let us know. And a link to that will also be later in the slides. And that closes December 15th. We also have the My Healthy Climate webinar series, which is similar to this in that we have a webinar series where we cover various aspects of climate plan implementation. So far we had an overview, which I stole a lot of these slides from that. We have also had one on the My Healthy Climate Core and one on the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant so far. And we also have a My Healthy Climate Monthly Bulletin, where we send out all kinds of climate-related news stories, jobs, input opportunities, and all kinds of other stuff. And so the link to that is there as well. And then we also have a public inbox. So feel free to email eagle-oce@michigan.gov anytime with questions about the climate plan, questions about current initiatives, just comments in general. It's there for folks to use and for us to really get some great feedback on. And so this is a lot. This is sort of just a timeline of where all of these things fall from, the creation of, or I guess the issuing of those executive orders and executive directives, and where we are now and where we're going. So if you can see my mouse, we're sort of here at the "we are here" marker, and then we have a few milestones that are upcoming that I won't get into detail about now, but it sort of gives you a good visual in terms of, where things are. So relevant funding opportunities. So we also try our best to track every single funding opportunity that comes out of the federal government. And so the things that are exclusively earmarked for public schools right now are Renew America Schools and the Clean School Bus Rebate Program. The links are in this slide, so I won't go into too much detail, that and also for the sake of time. But also for Renew America Schools, so far, no schools in Michigan have been awarded funding. And so I think that could be a fun challenge, and Eileen has identified that as well. And then for the Clean School Bus Rebate Program, if you have any questions on that, feel free to contact Katrina Morris, and her email is listed down below. And lastly, as I finish up here, these are basically all of the links that I promised everyone. Stay up to date with our newsletter, register for upcoming input sessions, submit to our call for projects, view our webinars, and come to the council meetings virtually and in person as they're released every quarter. For all kinds of great information, visit michigan.gov/climate. And if you have any questions, feel free to email that EGLE OCE inbox anytime. And so with that, I am officially done. I will stop sharing my screen, and I am more than happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Yeah, if you do have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat. There was one that came through. Emily asked what kind of projects you're looking for. Like, what would be an example of a kind of project that you're looking for in that call for projects?
Yeah, great question. So this may be a not very satisfying answer, or it may be a great answer. It depends on your perspective, but we're really looking for anything and everything. So similar to like our RFI, our public engagement opportunities, like if you have an idea, don't feel limited by, the sort of things that I've outlined here. If you even just like have an idea and maybe it's not super fully fleshed out yet, that's totally fine. So we are really looking for any project that folks would be interested in submitting. And if you have any further questions, again, feel free to reach out at any time, but please don't feel limited by, any of the information that I provided, as long as it aligns with the climate plan and moves towards emissions reductions. We are more than happy to hear it and integrate it into our planning where appropriate.
That sounds great. Well, I don't see any other questions in the chat right now, and I know you have to get out to your in-person meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and let Sarah go. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I can direct them to Sarah, or you can contact her or her team through the email address that we provided. But I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen. Thank you again, Sarah, so much. That was awesome. Thank you for spending your few minutes before you had to go speak in person to help talk to us. So state of Michigan, as you see, is leading on some really awesome work around climate action, but we also have some really awesome leadership right now around climate education. And so we're going to move on to hearing from Bridget Booth around what is happening on climate education in Michigan and how you can get involved. And after Bridget, stay tuned because anybody who sticks around till the end of the webinar gets special sneak preview of some very cool new Meeks climate change resources that are not yet publicly available. So you'll be the first ones to get them. So Bridget is an 8th grade science teacher at Haslett Middle School, and she is a certified environmental educator with the Michigan Alliance for Environmental and Outdoor Education, and she is currently a director on Mayo's board of directors and is leading a climate education action team that is focused on providing some resources and support to improve climate change education in Michigan. So I am going to stop sharing real quick and go ahead and let Bridget share, and she is going to talk about some of the work that they're doing to promote climate change education in Michigan.
Thank you so much, Eileen. Some great information. I promise not to talk too long so that you all get to hear a little bit more about those Meeks units because they're pretty fantastic. So let me share my screen really quickly. And we should be good to go. So great, thank you. So as Eileen mentioned, I am an 8th grade science teacher and I've been teaching science for longer than I'd care to admit, close to 20 years now, and have been a certified environmental educator for the last handful of years. And I will tell you a little bit more about that as we kind of move through the slides here. So just a quick preview of what I'll cover today. I'm going to be talking to you about the partnership that the Michigan Alliance for Environmental and Outdoor Education has right now with Michigan Community Action Network in really trying to push climate education forward in the state of Michigan. I'll tell you a little bit about the team and also the national support we're getting from the North American Association for Environmental Education through a fellowship. And then if we have time, I'll share a couple of my favorite resources that's a good example of a lesson that has a real cross-curricular focus, which is really what we're going for. I always like to start my presentations with a quote. And as we know, Greta Thunberg is one of our climate leaders. And I think that it's really important to highlight these young voices, especially now. And that's really the goal of this partnership and the work that we're doing with this climate education action team is really we're trying to prepare educators to teach this important content, but really we're also training educators to put it in the hands of the students. We really want young people to be leading the charge and to be empowered to do so as a partnership with adults. So I love this particular quote because she puts right out in front, I might not have as much experience, but that makes me a better listener is essentially what she's saying. And I think that that is a really important part of what we need to do right now is listen and learn. So let me tell you a little bit more about the partnership. So first of all, if you're not familiar with Mayo, which is what we like to call ourselves, again, we're the Michigan Alliance for Environmental and Outdoor Education. I've been serving on the board for, I think, 6 years now. Our mission is to support, inspire, and empower a diverse network of individuals with a passion for environmental and outdoor learning. So Mayo is really about connecting educators, and we are not just an organization for formal educators. We are looking at people who work at nature centers and museums and parks and conservation districts, anyone who's teaching around environmental topics, as well as organizations that focus on outdoor recreation and education. So we are really a professional organization that is about allowing people to connect with each other and network and take part in some really cool professional development opportunities. We are the state affiliate for the North American Association of Environmental Education, and we offer the only environmental educator certification available. So if you are interested in that and would like to know more, you should definitely check out our website at mayo.com, and you can learn a little bit more about our membership there as well. It's like we're one of the best bargains around. You get so much for a very limited membership fee, including our annual conference, which is growing every year and will be in Grand Rapids next fall. So really encourage you all to check it out and see what we have to offer. So we partnered up with the Michigan Climate Action Network last year. The executive director of that organization is Denise Keel, and she was our keynote speaker at our conference, our 2022 conference. And she was fabulous, and she inspired all of us to do more around climate education. And so from that, formed this partnership. They are an advocacy group, really advocating for, climate education, but also through just, climate transformation throughout Michigan. And they also are really motivated towards really highlighting youth voice in the process. So this was a really natural partnership, and we have been doing a lot of work since about last March, when we really all kind of got going. The work that we do is really motivated by some fairly recent reports that have come from the North American Association for Environmental Education with national surveys around climate education. And so that is a great report, and I encourage you to kind of look at the whole thing. If you go to NAAE, which is how we say that acronym, if you check out their website. But just kind of picking out a couple of nuggets here, you can see that there's kind of a gap between what teachers feel like should be taught and what they feel like they can teach. So there is definitely concern, and there is the belief that yes, climate education needs to be a part of instruction, but also that it's not really been prioritized by a lot of districts, and it's not always mandated at the government level. So there's kind of a disconnect between what teachers feel like they should do and is, how prepared they feel. So there's a confidence gap. So that's a pretty important thing for us to address here in the state of Michigan. This is a national survey, but we are working now on really getting a sense for how educators in Michigan feel. So we developed this educator input survey. It's been kind of out and circulating for the last couple of months and is still open for responses. So I highly encourage you to check that out. I'll give you a QR code in a minute if you want to snag that, or you can get the link from Eileen's resources a little bit later. And we're still kind of hashing through those results, and as I said, still collecting data. But you can see that, we're also kind of in a similar situation here, that we do have some of our educators are referring to climate change sporadically, infrequently, or maybe not at all. And that teachers are identifying, a good handful of barriers to bringing climate into their curriculum on a more regular basis. Mostly, which is every educator's nemesis, is time. Like, how do I do it? How do I do it well and develop quality climate ed lessons? But also sort of like, and I don't know, like, where do I even start? It can be pretty overwhelming. And it's not that there are no resources, it's that there are many, and it's difficult to figure out, like, how to navigate them. But everybody, or not everybody, but the majority is definitely interested in doing more. So that's encouraging, because we know that gives us something to work with. Here in Michigan, we don't have a state mandate to include climate education, and currently the standards really only exist in science and some social studies standards. So we are really trying to bring that to a cross-curricular focus. And then, of course, we just heard about the Michigan Healthy Climate Plan, and Eileen's been working really hard to insert education into that, but currently it doesn't specifically address it. So that's another one of our goals. So just a little information about the team itself, which is kind of a combination of individuals that kind of are in a variety of different roles. So I am a formal educator, but I also sit on the board for Mayo. So that kind of checks the formal educator box and the community partners. We have a lot of non-formal educators that are kind of providing that place-based focus, as well as like thinking about how we can really use community partners to enhance climate education. And then, of course, we have Eileen with EGLE, and we have some folks in the DNR as well, who are really kind of keeping us connected to Michigan's natural resources and, the environment here that's right around us. So this is important in kind of thinking about like what each of us are doing well, and, kind of taking advantage of what we each have to offer, so that we're not replicating anything, but we're really trying to work together to establish some common goals around climate education in Michigan. So far we've been pretty busy. We've been, as a team, working on, we've right away submitted some suggestions for NOAA's climate literacy principles. If you're not familiar with them, they've been around for a while, but they're doing kind of a revamp, a reboot. So I'd encourage you to keep an eye out for those. We've developed the survey. We've been presenting at multiple conferences, including Mayo's and NAAE's, as well as the GVSU Climate Change Education Solutions Summit. We've been working on a lot of grants right now so that we can try to do more with teacher training and developing some workshops for the summer, which we've already run a couple of those, specifically around polar ice climate science. So what's coming up is we are working on developing opportunities for educators to learn more, not just about the climate science, but also what resources are available and how can you incorporate best practice when it comes to the integration of cross-curricular climate education. So we are working on offering some virtual networking and sharing sessions. We will be presenting at some upcoming conferences this spring, including the Michigan Conference of the Teachers of English and the Michigan Science Teachers Association. We are really trying to work into getting into those other subject area conferences. We have really focused on environment and science, but it's becoming really important for us to have a presence in these other places, so that teachers in those subject areas can start thinking about how they can incorporate climate education into their daily instruction as well. We are really working hard on some specific summer workshops, and we just received some grant funding for those. So please keep an eye out for those. Check out our website. We'll be posting when we have those dates and settings established. We're also really trying to do a lot of resource collection, trying to organize it and make it meaningful and relevant for Michigan educators. So we are working on a resource dashboard and are talking with a number of partners in regards to that as well. So lots of great things coming down the line. Recently, I received a fellowship from the North American Association for Environmental Education, which focuses on climate education and civic engagement. So this is great because it allows the work that this action team is doing to be kind of piloted throughout this and next year. So I work at Hazlitt Middle School, and they're very supportive. And so we're working now. I'm working with teachers to kind of work on a cross-curricular integration, and we're kind of piloting resources and kind of thinking through some strategies that we are hoping will be able to offer up as kind of a how-to for how to do something like this in other schools throughout Michigan. So the fellowship is great in that it focuses on really making it a student-driven initiative, really thinking about student mental health and engagement, and also with a really heavy emphasis on social and environmental justice. So all really important things to consider when you're planning climate education. So it's pretty cool that we've got that, that support from this national organization. I know we're starting to run out of time, so I wanted to really quickly let you know that there are definitely ways you can get involved in this work if you're interested. We have the survey, and the more responses, the better. We are going to be working over the next couple of months, really kind of hashing through it and using it to prioritize the work that we're doing so that we're addressing the needs that teachers are facing right now. So that those survey responses will be really important to us. If you're interested in getting really involved, we always need help with grant writing and researching and tech and everything like that. So we are volunteers essentially. So the more help, the better. And then we also have a Padlet established. So if you have ideas that you want to share and aren't sure who to talk to, you can use that link and just post some ideas on that Padlet. I do have some lesson resources, and I'm probably not going to get into those right now. This is a really cool way to integrate science and art, which is kind of what Eileen referred to in the beginning. It's a really great connection, especially when you're kind of talking about mental health and thinking about how this scary scientific information is received, really kind of channeling it through art and giving students opportunities to express themselves throughout art is a really cool way to do it. So I did just want to show you this one site because it's super cool. I'm trying to tell a lot of people about it. It's called Turn It Around, and it's a great way to start conversations with students about what the images might be showing and how it connects to climate and how it makes them feel. And so, you can kind of go here and you turn it around, and it tells you a little bit about the art and the messaging, and a lot of it is art that's created by young people, and there's a lot more you can learn. So it's just a cool tie-in with some of the other resources I shared, like using the New York Times climate graphs and the language around talking about data, as well as giving students an opportunity to share science through art with a really cool Science Friday resource. So hopefully that's something that you can check out a little bit later. But those will all be available for you, and we are just kind of consistently doing the work for climate education in Michigan, and would love to hear more from you. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to Eileen. You can contact me at any time. I am happy to chat with you more about the work that we're doing and learn more about what you're doing. So thank you so much. Any questions for me?
Thank you so much, Bridget. And yeah, I'll share out all the resources from Bridget afterwards, including her contact information as well. And so, yeah, if you've got questions for Bridget, drop them in the chat. While you do that, I'm going to close us out with, as I promised, you all get first access to some really cool things that we've been creating with the Meeks climate change. So you've heard some cool information about what's happening in Michigan and some climate change action and education and how those activities are really focused on some of the solutions that are out there. I want to take the opportunity to plug the Michigan Green Schools program, which we facilitate here at the statewide level and have coordinators at the county level across the state who are doing awesome work. And so many of the things that our green schools are doing are making a difference towards climate change when it comes to things like building more resilient infrastructure, like green infrastructure with plants and trees, things that sequester carbon and soak up water. They're doing energy audits. They're reducing their energy use. They're supporting their community adaptation. There's so many amazing things happening that you can be a part of, and happy to meet with anybody and talk about that program or what your plan for your school might look like if you're interested. The Green Schools application period opens on January 1st, so it's a great time to start thinking about that right now. So there's a lot of resources that are there to support the work. Like I said, there's lots of resources I'm going to send out afterwards. You're going to get an anchor document with more things than you even imagined you might need. But now I'm going to share with you, you'll be the very first people outside of EGLE to receive this link, which I'm just about to drop in the chat, which is our new Michigan Enviro Learning Hub. So what that is I'm going to show you actually. I'm not going to go there live because I want to save time, but I'm going to show you some screenshots of what this hub looks like. So this is a hub where currently it is populated with resources to support the new MEECS climate change lessons that are in final stages of development right now. They will be released in January publicly. But because you came to this webinar and you stayed till the end, you got to get this link on where these resources are right now. And what this is a student-facing hub that has some supplemental activities for these MEECS lessons. And so they give students a chance to go through and dive into some very Michigan specific data. So right now it's just climate change on there, but you notice there's a home tab. And when you go to the home tab, it talks a little bit about GIS, which is cool and a skill that you should definitely foster in your students if you have the opportunity. And it tells you a little bit about other options that are coming up. We will have some more resources that we'll be creating over the winter months to support our updated water quality and ecosystems and biodiversity lessons. We'll have some resources around environmental justice coming up in the next few months, and then we'll go back towards the older MEECS units and you'll get a chance to see those as well. So this is what the hubs look like. One of the resources on there is a climate and weather data dashboard. So to help students learn about the difference between climate, that long-term looking at normals and versus weather, what's happening today. And so you can choose a city from the corner in this dashboard and it populates this these averages, which are 30-year climate normals. And then you can also take that same city and you can click on the city on the map and it shows you today's weather from the current weather station. We also have these red squares on here they're actually buoys. So if you wanted to do current weather on land versus on a buoy on the water, you can do that too. So that's one of the apps that's in there. Another app is a story map that takes you into the life story of Eunice Newton-Foote, who is actually the first person who researched and discovered some of the impacts, the planet warming impacts that greenhouse gases can have on the atmosphere. So she was kind of an unknown figure for a long time until kind of 2010, 2011. And so there's a cool story about her life and her research, and you can learn more about her and kind of try to practice recreating that experiment yourself. And you can see up here on the map, there's background, there's her discoveries, there's her inventions, there's her legacy, there's some cool stuff about her. So that's a nice cross-curricular connection. We have another dashboard looking at impacts of climate change. I'd love to build out more dashboards in this section, but the one we have right now focuses on extreme heat and heat illness hospitalizations in the state. So you have a state where the white is the average state temperature in July. Blue means it's cooler than average. Red means it's hotter than average for the whole state in July. And it looks at, what the population looks like there. Again, you can select a county. So for example, if we selected Macomb County, it would zoom in and it would show us that county's average temperature, how many people are there, how many heat illness hospitalizations we had. And then even cooler, you can click on that's for that data that I was just talking about. Then when you click on the map, you can click on a census tract and it'll show you the average temperature in that census tract and whether that census tract is hotter or cooler than the county average. So you can start to look at impacts very locally in your own community. One option, you can give me feedback later if you're interested. We could actually add the neighborhood data as another row up there in the app, but we felt like it was kind of busy, so we kept it off. But if you guys see that and you're like, well, that's cool, I love that, let me know and we can add that back in. But right now that data looks more like that and you would just see the info in the pop-up. Oh, and that's how that looks. And then finally, the last thing is an app that helps us understand how to use some existing tools for specifically the climate mapping for resilience and adaptation tool, which is incredible for looking at how to identify local solutions to climate change in your own community. And so we've built a story map that walks you through a sample scenario of flooding in Detroit and helps you learn how to use this tool. And so it shows you how you can explore the data in table formats, how you can explore the data in a map-based format. So some students might like that spatial view, some might like looking at the table. It shows you how to generate reports for each county, which is really fun, and I think a really nice way to view all of the information. And then sends you off and prompts you to look at your own. So those are the 4 apps that are developed as part of the climate page on the hub. There are more to come, potentially even in climate and definitely in the other MEECS units. If there are pieces that you are familiar with from the MEECS that you love, that you would like to see more, definitely let me know. And we are in process of thinking about what the apps would look like for other MEECs. So we're definitely taking input on that. So with that, I'm just going to tell you lots of climate education resources that I'm going to send out. Look at this, pages and pages of resources that I'm going to send out to you at the end of this webinar. And you're going to get them in your email, and you're going to get to share them, and you're going to get to have them to keep for as long as you need. And this is not a secret link. You are welcome to share it with others if you would like, and just know that the page will be linked to our MEECS page in January, along with the full MEECS climate change resources that are coming out at that time. I did see if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. I know we went 2 minutes over, so I don't want to keep you past your time, but if you do have questions, I would be happy to take them at this time. And I did see your question, David. Was this something that was shared at MEECS Week? This was not done at MEECS Week at the Academy of Natural Resources this past summer. So no, this is a new resource that you can add to your collection. I will probably be presenting on the MEECS Climate Change Unit at DNR's Academy of Natural Resources this upcoming summer in July. So there is a strand called the education project strand, I think, where they go through all the different state level environmental ed plans. So there will be one page or one day of climate stuff where I'll go through the new MEECS climate change, if that's of interest to you.